FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
We could discuss that question, whether Iran will get a bomb. But there are much more important questions. For example, about a week ago, here's something I learned because I was in Mexico. In Mexico, they have an extremely good newspaper, La Jornada, maybe the only real independent newspaper in the hemisphere. They happened to run a wire service report, which turns out is all over the wire services, which has not been reported here to my knowledge, namely that the International Atomic Energy Agency passed a resolution, not about Iran, those are the ones we hear about, usually inaccurately, but they passed a resolution calling on Israel to join the Non-Proliferation Treaty and to open up its nuclear facilities to inspection. Well, the United States and the European Union tried to block it, and when they failed to block it, they voted against it, but it passed anyway. Well, that's really important news, especially with the hysteria about maybe Iran is concealing something. There was a report 2 or 3 days ago in the Washington Times that President Obama had assured Israel that they wouldn't have to react to this, and of course they rejected it. Now, that's important news. Or on the same issue, is Iran concealing something? There are other countries, nuclear powers, that aren't concealing it, except that it isn't reported here, as far as I could tell. So, for example, the Security Council passed a resolution maybe a week or 10 days ago, which was treated here as a great victory for Obama, resolution directed against Iran. Actually, if you read the resolution, it was directed against the United States, Israel, India, and Pakistan. But that's another question. That you can find out on the internet by looking up the resolution. However, what's harder to find out is that India, a nuclear power, greeted the resolution by announcing publicly and proudly that it can now produce nuclear weapons with a yield comparable to that of the United States and Russia. Well, that's quite significant. They're not concealing it. Actually, that, if you really study the internet carefully, you could find. It was reported in the front page, in fact, of the London Financial Times, major business journal in the world. So it can't be that the news bureaus don't know it. And there's more that isn't discussed, and you can discover, but it takes research. All of these countries, Israel, India, and there are 3 countries that have never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, India, Pakistan, and Israel. In each case, their nuclear weapons programs have been significantly aided by the United States. In the case of Pakistan, maybe sometimes called the most dangerous country in the world with some merit, its nuclear programs are a gift to the world by your former governor, Ronald Reagan. His administration pretended that they didn't know that Pakistan was developing nuclear weapons in the 1980s because they wanted to maintain their massive support for the dictatorship of Zia-ul-Haq, who was the worst, most vicious dictator in Pakistan's history, and was also carrying out a kind of a radical Islamization of the country with Saudi and U.S. support. And we know the consequences of that. We're living with the consequences of that. Well, what about India? Israel, I don't have to talk about, it's obvious. In the case of India, you may recall, just about a year ago, the U.S. signed entered into a treaty with India, which effectively authorizes Indian nuclear weapons production. That's what it's not the wording. The wording says that India though not a signer of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, can override the international restrictions and can gain access to nuclear technology from us, from France, from others. And of course, that transfers very readily into nuclear weapons production. So here we have three countries that have never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. In each case, they're nuclear powers. In each case, they're pretty openly proceeding to defy international organizations, the International Monitoring Organization, the IAEA, announcing that their programs are moving along fast, and in each case they're supported by the United States.